one's gunning for me tonight. I spent the last week running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive. Let's get lost tonight. Lord, who's on my right?
Hello, wackos. Welcome to another episode of Without a Country. I am Corinne Fisher. This is a pre-tape episode, but it worked out perfectly because it's very hard with the live stream to time it and with, all the technological elements to get some guests on. And there are several guests that I've wanted to have on the show. I don't know what happened, but in the past couple of months, I have been getting so many publicists emailing me, offering me different types of guests that never went down. So I don't know. Without a Country has officially entered the political show ether because I'm getting, and they're interesting too, right? I'm not just going to have a guest on to have a guest on. I read all the pitches and and we had an offer for a pastor who is a member of the White House Faith Office, which we've talked about on this show before, a man who founded Pastors for Trump, which helped Donald Trump win the 2016 election, I believe, and is still here. Or I'm sorry, you know what I'm just realizing now, Mike? I think he said, I have to go back to the video, but I'm thinking too, he said 2016. No, I believe his quote was, now that I'm reviewing it in my mind, that helped push him through for the 2020 election because he's an election results denier. I know this about him. And I didn't even catch that when he said it, but I think in retrospect, he said Pastors for Trump helped push Donald Trump through in 2020. I think he did say that. Anyway, well, I'll have to go back and look at this, but we're going to get to that interview in just a little bit, but this episode of Without a Country is a specialty evergreen episode. Well, hopefully not evergreen, but it's definitely going to be good for a while. And it's all about Christian nationalism. This was a show that I actually had planned before the Charlie Kirk assassination. It was kind of going to be a God Watch special, and the timing really worked out because Christian nationalism is the conversation of the moment. And so that's what this episode is all about. And this pastor did, his publicist did reach out to me prior. I want to go back and make sure I'm not speaking incorrectly, but I believe it was prior to Charlie Kirk's assassination, and I was already interested in having him on because he's promoting a book that he released in May of this year. And that's what, the conversation was going to be about. And like I said, the separation of church and state is already such a big topic on here that it was, yes, Sunday, September 7th was the initial email. So that's what I thought. I remembered it as before the Charlie Kirk assassination. And I was already interested in having him on. So, this is more relevant than ever right now. And that's what this entire episode is going to be about. I think it's really important. My friend who works for Americans United for separation of church and state is also going to be appearing on this show. He's just been traveling so much for work because there's so much to be done in the separation of church and state right now. So he's been really busy, and we discussed it and thought that it would be a great opportunity for him to actually come into the studio since he lives in New York City. And because of the nature of this show, where we like to hear from both sides, I just wanted to let you know in advance that will be the compilation, the complementary piece to today's interview. So I'm not just having on a pastor from the White House Faith Office and then leaving it at that. We will have on Brian Silver from Americans United, who is doing really interesting work. And we'll continue the conversation from there. But this is part one, and we are letting conservatives and Republicans go first in this conversation. Before we get into the interview, though, I'm going to go through some articles that I found interesting recently about Christian nationalism. Then we'll do an article about today's guest, Paston Jackson Lahmeyer. And then after that, I will respond to some things, fact check, clarify some things that we discussed during the interview. I prepared really well for the interview. That being said, obviously things are going to come up that I factually am going to need to fact check. I was trying to fact check as best as I could, but it's very hard to do and still engage properly in the way that every guest on this show deserves while talking to him. But I do have some clarifications for some things that we discussed. And I just think it's really interesting. I know some people get very angry when podcasters platform people that most that they disagree with, or most of their listeners or followers disagree with. That is never how I have approached podcasting. And I think there's a big difference between, having Donald Trump on your show and yucking it up with him and not asking him any challenging questions, like some other podcasters have done, and then actually having someone on who you openly disagree with, telling them you disagree with them, and asking them pressing questions about their views, things they've said, and the work that they're doing in their country is a different thing. I know some of you will still disagree with that and think that I shouldn't platform individuals like this at all. And that is fine. That is your opinion. I totally understand. I just think that avoiding these people has not worked. The right and conservatives in general, we know on the left, are just much better at organizing and they're better at executing. And they're better at messaging. That's something that we hear the same things over and over, but the messaging is clear, concise, and it's shared, even if we think it's wackadoo, which I do. But there's real power to that. Even when I was running for mayor, a big discussion with my team, and why Zoran Mamdani, a big part of why he won, is because of his clear, concise messaging. He picked 3 policy pieces for his platform, and anytime I did a mayoral forum with him or on the debate stage, he would answer the question, but he would most times start with, or somewhere in the conversation or response, tag in those 3 policy points again and again and again. And it really, and it really worked. We're so overwhelmed in today's society that we can only take in a certain amount of information, especially if politics is just something that you're participating in, not your actual career. So let's get into it. The enemy of the state, I don't want to say it's Christian nationalism. That doesn't seem like a welcoming for our guests, but I would say the enemy of the state is the current state of Christian nationalism, or the way
of the state,
or perhaps the way that Christian nationalism is being intertwined with Republican politics and weaponized. I will say that. So I'm going to start with an article from CNN from September 22nd. And we're recording this, just so you guys know, on September 25th. Again, sorry, I am just traveling so much in October, but I want to make sure you guys have episodes every week. And I was excited to actually have the time and sit down to, and talk about Christian nationalism for the entire time, which we don't get, the chance to do because there's always so much in the moment news. This is an analysis by Zachary B. Wolf from CNN Politics. Americans are used to hearing about the tradition of separating church and state, but the two are increasingly fused in President Donald Trump's administration. The First Amendment, after all, in addition to guaranteeing free speech, says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. U.S. leaders talk about Jesus Christ at Kirk's funeral. Never in recent memory have Americans seen more top government officials speak so openly about Jesus Christ as they did at Charlie Kirk's memorial, which Trump described as an old-time revival rather than a funeral. And I'll stop here to say another reason that I wanted to have Pastor Lahmeyer on today. Although I was already interested before the Charlie Kirk assassination, what makes it me even more interesting post-assassination is, well, number one, how they're really using this as an opportunity for Christian nationalism. But additionally, because I thought it was a problem how many Democrats and liberals were not familiar with Charlie Kirk prior to his assassination. And I think that's a problem because we see the amount of people in this memorial that he affected. This is the man who at the time of death, I believe, had 7.5 million Instagram followers. If you have someone with 7.5 million Instagram followers who is talking heavily about politics and religion and really has this ability to get people together to really, for lack of a better word, form his own congregation in a way, that's someone who you need to be aware of what they're doing. And staying in a bubble and only taking in the opinions of people we agree with is a problem, because when things like that happens, it really it really catches us off guard, right? So many people were like, I didn't ever even heard of this guy. You should have heard of Charlie Kirk. And honestly, if you've never heard of Charlie Kirk before his assassination, that to me says that you are too immersed in your own bubble. Certainly no one who watches this show or listens to this show could say that, because we've talked about Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA on here before. But I really do think that is a problem. Staying away from certain issues or certain people hasn't been working for us, right? And so I think what needs to happen now for us to be winning some of these battles that we so desperately need to win is we need to be well-versed in the, to borrow Pastor Lahmeyer's word, enemy. We need to be well-versed in the enemy. And now his enemy and my enemy are different enemies, but enemies nonetheless. And I think this also pertains to things like gun control. I've talked about that on the show a lot, that it's the people who are trying to control guns know nothing about guns. And that is a losing battle. Therefore, if your main thing that you want to work on and you want to devote your life to is clearing the United States of guns, gun control, stopping mass shootings, I would recommend to you learning a lot about guns, people who use guns, people who legally own guns, people who advocate for guns, the NRA, all of this stuff. And I just don't really see that happening amongst many people. I just think we need to know what we're talking about. You need to familiarize yourself with the enemy. It makes sense that Kirk's funeral would feature religious overtones. Conversion was at the core of Kirk's conservatism, something praised by the country's assembled top political leaders who attended his funeral, including the president, vice president, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and much of the president's cabinet. Saying God on their side, the podcaster Benny Johnson talked about the idea of godly government and pointed out at Trump's assembled cabinet secretaries. God has given them power over our nation and our land, he said, adding it was God who saved Trump from a different assassin's bullet for this moment. Trump officials said God is on their side as they go after their political enemies. Quote, we are on the side of goodness. We are on the side of God, White House advisor Stephen Miller said in a speech. Like Trump's, promised retribution against an unnamed evil, though authorities have said Kirk's alleged killer acted alone. And that quote from Stephen Miller, I think, is really important, right? Let's read it again. He says, we are on the side of goodness. We are on the side of God. what does that remind us of? To me, it reminds me of liberals, that we always think we're good and we say things like, I want to be on the right side of history. And again, something I point out time and time again on this show is that, number one, how do we know? Like, I know in this realm what I perceive to be right and wrong, the right choice and the wrong choice. But I mean, if there is a God, maybe God did like what Charlie Kirk is. I just don't really know. It's just, my problem is both sides just being so damn sure that they are right. And that's the thing. It's like, I think a lot of liberals have this viewpoint that people on the right like get out of bed in the morning and like want to do bad things. And I've always thought, no, like they think we are doing bad things. They think that the LGBT, us supporting the LGBTQ community is evil, and being single, like me until you're 39 and child free is selfish. Like I actually do believe many people really think these things to be true, even though it seems crazy to us, because they think we're crazy too. And here is the problem. Here is the disconnect. Secretary of State Marco Rubio delivered a sermon that concluded with discussion of the second coming. Vice President J.D. Vance, who referred to Kirk as a warrior for country, a warrior for Christ, counseled Americans to live worthy of Charlie's sacrifice and put Christ at the center of your life. Where does religious belief veer into Christian nationalism? Christian nationalism is a concept rejected by many scholars that the U.S. was formed as a Christian nation and that Christianity should imbue its laws. And this is certainly something that was brought up during the interview that you'll see in a little bit. And I said, while it's true that a lot of people who came over wanted to practice Christianity, what's also true is that they wanted a place where they could practice religious freedom, which I think is the main point when I think of America. It's political autonomy. It's the ability to pursue better economic opportunities and religious freedom. Many Trump administration actions have blurred the lines between church and state. In the days before Kirk was assassinated at Utah Valley University, Trump delivered a speech at the privately funded Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. I gotta visit that. I love going to psychotic religious places. Like, I'm really into it. Where he promised to protect prayer in public schools through forthcoming guidance from the Department of Education. Like the Billy Graham Library, that's the kind of thing, that's how committed I am to what I talk about on this show. When I was in North Carolina, I was dating someone in North Carolina for a while, a couple years ago, and I went to the Billy Graham Library, and it was great. And I'm not saying that sarcastic. I didn't walk around and make fun of everything. I just really learned a lot about something that, if it was not presented to me in a museum, I wouldn't have known about. And people were going there really seriously. And I'm I just think it's so important to see things in the way that other people are seeing them, to gain some perspective. All right, let's see. So Trump delivered the speech at the privately funded Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., where he promised to protect prayer in public schools through forthcoming guidance from the Department of Education. To have a great nation, you have to have religion, Trump said. I believe that so strongly. There has to be something after we go through all of this, and that something is God. It's so funny coming from Trump. He just does not come across as religious in literally any way. Religion at the Department of Justice. After that September 8th speech, Trump met with the Religious Liberty Commission he created by executive action at the Department of Justice. Among the commission's charges is, quote, exploring the foundations of religious liberty in America and identifying current threats to domestic religious liberty. And that's something that you'll hear, you have to, kind of listen for these slight changes or alterations in wording, because I always say religious freedom. And I notice that hardcore Christians always say religious liberty. the ACLU will also say religious liberty. So I'm not saying it's like specific to Christians, but, it's described as the fundamental human right to hold, practice, and express one's religious beliefs, or to not hold any beliefs without government interference or coercion. So seems pretty interchangeable to me, but I do notice, like, just so you're on board with the language that a lot of politicians and religious leaders are using. They do use the phrase religious liberty more widely now. Trump labeled previous Justice Department prosecutions of anti-abortion rights protesters outside clinics as a form of anti-Christian bias. Last month, CNN's Pamela Brown profiled self-described Christian nationalist pastor Douglas Wilson, who has ties to Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Wilson is based in Idaho, but his organization has opened an outpost in the nation's capital. Wilson, who appeared at Kirk's The Believers Summit in 2024, told Brown he would like the U.S. to be a Christian theocracy. He would also like to make homosexuality illegal. New IRS rules for pastors in politics. In July, Trump's IRS declared that pastors who endorse political candidates should not lose their tax-exempt status. That's very interesting. It's a very small piece of this article. It's literally one line. And in the interview you'll hear later, when I asked about what the war on Christianity was, because I just found that interesting choice of words when 62% approximately of the U.S. are Christians, the pastor described in part the government attacking churches financially. And so it's funny that that's the story they're telling. And then we see it's actually never been a better time to, be a religious leader who is also dipping their toe into politics, seemingly. Proselytizing in the federal workplace. That same month, the Office of Management and Budget said that federal workers can now bring religion into the federal workplace, including promoting their religious beliefs to colleagues. Hegseth has hosted working hours prayer services at the Pentagon. One in May featured the pastor of his Tennessee church, which is affiliated with Wilson's Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches. Many Americans wouldn't agree. The Public Religion Research Institute has tried in recent years to gauge Christian nationalism and how it is spreading in the U.S. In 2024, it estimated that about 30% of Americans would qualify as either adherents or as sympathizers to Christian nationalism, according to their definition, including a majority of Republicans. And I mean, there is a link to specifically, to prri.org and what their actual definition of Christian nationalism. We talk about it at length here. Let's see. It says measuring Christian nationalism. To measure Christian nationalism, the PRRI Brookings Christian Nationalism Survey included a battery of 5 questions about the relationship between Christianity, American identity, and the U.S. government. Respondents were asked whether they completely agree, mostly disagree, or completely disagree with each of the following statements. So these are the statements. 1, the U.S. government should declare America a Christian nation. 2, U.S. laws should be based on Christian values. 3, if the U.S. moves away from our Christian foundations, we will not have a country anymore. 4, being Christian is an important part of being truly American. 5, God has called Christians to exercise dominion over all areas of American society. Those are pretty heavy questions, I would say. But the portions vary widely across the U.S. About half of the people in some southern states like Mississippi, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Alabama are either adherents or sympathizers, compared to only about a third in red states like Florida and Texas. In many blue states, less than a quarter of residents either adhere to or sympathize with Christian nationalism, according to PRRI, which means a large portion of the country also does not share their philosophy about the role of Christianity in the government. What do you think they mean by sympathize, Mike? Like that they respect that their viewpoints existing? Like, what does that mean? What do they mean sympathize, you think?
I couldn't tell you.
I thought it was interesting language to be using, right? Because, like, I mean, to me, I acknowledge that these people exist and that these are their viewpoints. And I think that, like, that's as far as I can go. I acknowledge that these are their viewpoints. I acknowledge that I think that they really believe these things. And I acknowledge that these people are fellow citizens of my country. I don't know. All right. Moving on to the next article. This is from the National Review. As a reminder, National Review, very conservative, very right-wing. And this article is by Rich Lowry, who is the editor-in-chief of the National Review. And this is from September 23rd, and it says the Charlie Kirk Memorial wasn't Christian nationalism. Again, this episode is not going to be about Charlie Kirk. We actually talked about him very little and on purpose in the interview, again, because this was something that was brewing long before the assassination, but the timing is suspicious.
So I did look up the definition of sympathizers.
Okay.
Because they put out a study where they asked 5 questions.
Oh, like Nazi sympathizers, obviously. Okay, yeah.
The U.S. government should be declared a Christian nation. U.S. laws based Christian values. You read those out,
right? Right.
Sorry about that.
Yummy.
Yeah. Definitely become a smoker. It's great choice for your life. All right, so Christian nationalism adherents, those were people who scored between 0.75 and 1 on this test. These Americans overwhelmingly either agree or completely agree with statements in the scale. This group includes 10% of Americans. And then Christian nationalism sympathizers, those are people who score from between 0.5 and 0.74 on that test.
Oh, so it's just like medium.
And yeah, so it's saying a majority of these Americans agree with the statements in the scale, but they are less likely than adherents to quote unquote completely agree. This group includes 19% of Americans. So total between adherents and sympathizers, they get to 29%.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. All right, again, let's move on to this National Review one. The Charlie Kirk Memorial wasn't Christian nationalism. All right, so we really can't get any more counterpoint than this. Perfect headline. I love it. Again, conservatives really get into the point in the headline. Get to the point in the headline. It's okay to mix politics and religion. The left knows what it saw at the Charlie Kirk Memorial, and it was a clear and present danger to the American Republic. NPR titled an interview from a writer with Christianity Today, How Charlie Kirk's Memorial Service Galvanized the Christian Nationalism Movement. A dispatch from The Guardian was headlined, The Devil is Not Gonna Win, How Charlie Kirk Became a Christian Nationalist Martyr. Mother Jones declared Charlie Kirk's memorial was Christian nationalism's biggest moment. We read that on the show. The problem with this is that Christian nationalism, in any meaningful sense, doesn't exist. It would entail establishing a Christian state to impose Christian values by law, and no one of any consequence favors that. Saying that we are a Christian nation, meaning that our people were overwhelmingly Christian at our inception, or our founders thought we needed Christian virtue for the republic to survive, doesn't count. Neither does trying to elect Christian leaders. Neither does trying to pass laws based on Christian morality. And neither, certainly, does cabinet officials talking about their faith at a memorial service. Mother Jones was upset that at the service a pastor called for people to accept Jesus, and immediately afterwards the national anthem played, as if patriotism in any proximity to faith is an establishment of religion. The fact is that what's most objectionable about Trump's second term isn't the runaway Christianity, but the effort to wreak revenge on his political enemies through the law and regulatory power. Needless to say, this isn't a Christian project, nor are his legally dubious strikes on drug boats in the Caribbean or his questionable deportation of alleged gang members to an El Salvadoran prison. Although there are good reasons for Christian conservatives to support the president, Trump has never been a moralizer, and the administration's emphasis is on strength and fighting our enemies rather than advancing, let alone imposing a biblical vision. Trump is quite open about this. Amusingly, amid all the talk of the gospel and loving our enemies at the memorial service, Trump stipulated that actually he hates his enemies. Well, to me, this is very much giving Project 2025. And what I mean by that is while Trump was running for his second term, it was quite clear to anyone who was paying attention, Project 2025 was going to be exactly what was implemented if Trump won the second term. But Trump would always deny that he was a part of it, yet everyone around him seemed to be involved in Project 2025. So like this, I actually agree with the writer that Trump himself is not very Christian, and Trump himself doesn't really seem to push Christianity that much. He talks about it sometimes, and there's some very weird quotes, but what he does do is surrounds himself with super Christian people. So again, to me, let's look at the playbook. It's the same exact thing going on. Oh, I'm not pushing Christianity, but everyone in my vicinity is doing it. So I think this is a very weak argument from the editor-in-chief of the National Review. I would expect better. George W. Bush's compassionate conservatism was much more Christian, and sure enough, he too was called a Christian nationalist. I mean, much more Christian in the Jesus Christ Christian sense of the word, yes. And we're going to get into George W. Bush's influence actually on the nation when it comes to Christianity. Never mind that Bush wasn't a nationalist. The charge of Christian nationalism may be more accurate now in the extremely limited sense that many Trump officials and MAGA figures are nationalists who are Christians or Christians who are nationalists, but they aren't Christian nationalists pursuing a Christian nationalist agenda. It was in this sense that Kirk called himself a Christian nationalist, by the way. He said a few months ago, quote, "I've never described myself as a Christian nationalist. I'm a Christian and separately, I am a nationalist." I added the separately there, but that's what he said. There's nothing wrong or theocratic about mixing politics and faith. Nearly everyone does it. As NPR reported of Joe Biden in 2020, without any evident sense of alarm, his speeches are woven with references to God, biblical language, or the Pope. And I did notice that when Joe Biden was president too. In the past, since I've become an adult, I constantly question why religious, whether it's the direct acknowledgement of a Christian God or something biblical or religious being snuck into what should be a political speech or conversation. I've been noticing that nonstop. And yes, from both Democratic and Republican presidents. Yes, there was a lot of religion and politics at the Kirk Memorial Service, but it was a memorial and one for a high-profile evangelical who was also a political activist tied into the highest echelons of the current administration. The key word at the service was revival, a phenomenon that is driven from below by religious passion and conversions, not by government edict. When Erica Kirk spoke of reaching young men, it was via a gospel-based message through the culture. She wasn't advocating new government programs or regulations. The overwhelming sense of the service is that faith is prior to and more important than government. For decades, the media and the left have highlighted a fringe figure or faction here or there to try to prove that the right is really committed to imposing Christian nationalism. But in the United States of America, such a project would require overturning the Constitution to make for an establishment of religion. And where do we hear anything like that among conservative Christians? Again, this is a weak argument. And after you hear the conversation I had with this pastor, who again, in the White House faith office, after Kirk's assassination, some people recalled Ross Douthat's famous admonition that if you dislike the religious right, wait till you meet the post-religious right. Douthat may have been correct, but the reaction to the Kirk Memorial Service is a reminder that progressives still really dislike the religious right. All right, Rich Lowry, that's what you're going with. All right. And the last article I'm going to read is actually an interview about today's guest. Again, it's Pastor Jackson Lahmeyer. He is a pastor in Oklahoma, and he just turned 34. He's married. He has children. His wife is also a pastor. He gives some of that information in the interview as well. But just so you know what we're doing, I do find men in their early 30s, Charlie Kirk was 31. Zoran Mamdani is in his early 30s. What is he, like 30? I think he'll be like 34 by the time he's in office. It's a very interesting time for young men in politics. It really, I do really think it's their moment, baby. Keep an eye. And this is from Rolling Stone, and this is from December 27th, 2022. Okay. Just saying, I think it's good to give a little backstory. This is someone who has only kind of gravitated to this world, publicly at least, in the past, 5 or so years, I would say. Alex Jones did nothing wrong. Meet the Christian nationalist behind Pastors for Trump. Tulsa preacher Jackson Lahmeyer is building a movement to battle demonic Democrats and put Donald Trump back in the White House. Even by the standards of the MAGA fever swamps, Pastor Jackson Lahmeyer's social media posts are extreme. A sampling of his outre takes. Oh, and also, maybe I misspoke, and maybe he is an election denier. I looked that up. Again, I didn't clear it with him, but I read that he is an election denier. But, correct me if I'm wrong. Perhaps in the interview, he was talking about winning the election with Donald Trump in 2024, and that's mostly what his 501c4 did. So these are some of quotes from the pastor. Alex Jones did nothing wrong. Fauci is a mass murdering Luciferian. Speaker Pelosi is a demon. I know Mike really loves that one. January 6th equals FBI inside job. Bring out the tanks, immigration moratorium. And, I did have these quotes isolated if I needed to use them in the interview. But I didn't feel like the interview or the temperature of the interview, as Kamala would say, really lent itself to that. So I didn't take the combative approach. I just, I think there's instances where that works and instances where it's not necessary and kind of just used because it's a clippable moment. And I don't like to run my show like that. Yet far from making him politically radioactive, the Oklahoma church leader's trollier-than-thou persona helps explain his rapid ascent in the orbit of Donald Trump. Lahmeyer leads the newly created Pastors for Trump, a 50-state organization that aims to revive evangelical support for the disgraced insurrectionist former president as Trump makes his bid for the 2024 GOP nomination. Lahmeyer announced the formation of Pastors for Trump on the Stone Zone podcast and in early December. The group is ostensibly independent of the presidential campaign, but Trump blessed Pastors for Trump, sending Lahmeyer a thank you note in black Sharpie and promoting the group on Truth Social. Our registration numbers just spiked, Lahmeyer tells Rolling Stone, the moment he truthed it out. Pastors for Trump is the brainchild of an extremist in both religion and politics, and a man who celebrates the union of the two realms. I will embrace Christian nationalism, Lahmeyer declared this fall on a stop of the Reawaken America tour, because we are at war in this country. It is a spiritual war between good and evil. The emergence of a figure like Lahmeyer at the very beginning of the 2024 election cycle underscores two key trends. First, overt Christian nationalism, the ideology that America was founded on and should be governed to enforce conservative Christian morality, is becoming central to the GOP nominating process. And second, Trump and his brain trust are moving to lock in evangelical voters as a tier 1 priority before they're tempted to decamp for candidates with more authentic spiritual convictions, like former Vice President Mike Pence or Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. For some men, politics and proselytizing are two sides of the same coin. Lahmeyer is 31 at the time he just turned 34. He sports close-cropped brown hair and speaks in a staccato honed over years in the pulpit. He has been living a mix of religion and politics since the 2020 election, a hardcore election denier who also encouraged defiance of COVID health mandates. Lahmeyer leveraged both issues to challenge Oklahoma Senator James Lankford in the 2022 Republican primary, a far-right campaign guided by Trump-pardoned felons General Michael Flynn and Roger Stone. And that's why I also thought he was interesting, because not only is he on the White House, in the White House Faith Office, he also ran for office, right? And I think that is interesting, especially at a time when the Democratic Party talks, he didn't win, but talks constantly, about ourselves as, that we suck and we need to run better campaigns. That bid launched Lahmeyer as a rising star in MAGA world, a status he's seeking to burnish with his backing of Trump 2024. Lahmeyer tells Rolling Stone he launched the new organization hoping to fill a vacuum of evangelical support for the former president. The Washington Post wrote a story about the silence of evangelical leaders that were previously very strong supporters of President Trump. He says that prompted pastors for Trump. I began laying the infrastructure behind the scenes, getting pastors in all 50 states. Again, mobilizing, okay? The right knows how to mobilize. I don't like this. I don't like what he's going for. I respect the hustle. I think there's things to be learned. Organized as a 501c4, a dark money nonprofit, Pastors for Trump allows a high level of secrecy from donors and participants alike. Lahmeyer says the Trump-backing pastors will only be made public at their discretion, though the group's state and regional directors will soon be named. By law, churches risk their nonprofit status by engaging directly in politics. But Lahmeyer insists that Pastors for Trump is a licit forum for religious leaders as individuals to exercise their political rights apart from their churches. Yet when asked if the aim is to get MAGA-minded preachers to lead their flocks to back Trump, Lahmeyer is not coy. He replies, absolutely. Many evangelicals, Christians, see Trump as a politician who served his purpose. God had a plan for the sinner in the White House, but Trump's moment has passed. By contrast, Lahmeyer sees Trump as a kindred spirit with more to deliver, regardless of the former president's personal shortcomings. Here's what I know. President Trump's actions bear the fruit, Lahmeyer says. He's been the best pro-Christian president we've had in my lifetime. The pastor ticks off among the 45th president's hits, the relocation of the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, the Abraham Accords, and the Supreme Court justices who abolished Roe. In Oklahoma, we are now an abortion-free state, and that is thanks to President Donald Trump. And so again, really just like you'll see in the interview, just like talking about the same concepts over and over. Like even when I bring up something not having to do with that, because like I wasn't even trying to have really a long conversation about abortion. I don't think there's really anywhere to get, and I kind of know what points, the other side is going to bring up. So there's other things I would rather tackle. But you'll see there's always ways to kind of go back to the key points. I mean, one of them being like transgender people in sports. I mean, like I didn't even bring it up, but it's a way to distract and divert and keep going back to these same points over and over again. And it really works. Not on me, but like in general. Lahmeyer and Trump share a conspiratorial worldview on issues from election fraud to quack COVID treatments to lies about the 44th president. Quote, Barack Hussein Obama is a Muslim, Lahmeyer has tweeted, but the pastor also relates to Trump's failings. As a high schooler, Lahmeyer fathered a child and married the mother in a teen union that didn't last. He argues, he conveniently left that part out. He did talk about
Married father of 5 children. No talk of a second wife, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, because he talked a lot about becoming a parent as a 17-year-old. He did not. He really worked his way around that divorce. Because I was like, I went through this article for facts, but it's interesting now, having spoken to him, that he worked his way around that. He argues, although I will say, he also does point out that he finds God when he becomes a teen father. So I'm guessing his argument might be, it's like, oh, well, I got divorced, because I found God after. He argues that a person's history shouldn't determine their present and their future. I agree on that. Adding, I had a tremendous past in high school. If we were going to base it upon that, I wouldn't be qualified to be a pastor. One thing I noticed about him is that he uses the word tremendous a lot. And the only other person I know who uses the word tremendous a lot is Donald Trump. Lahmeyer grew up in Oklahoma and attended Oral Roberts University, where he received both a BA and a master's. He began his career as a crusade director for Christ for All Nations, and then served as state coordinator for the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. Lahmeyer says his job, in essence, was to pack arenas for Pentecostal pastor Reinhard Bonnke and Franklin Graham, respectively. Mobilization is my background, he says. And it really shows, and that's part of the reason I was interested in talking to him, because we talk about mobilization, and how the right is just absolutely pouncing on the left in it. And that's why I think the oligarchy tour that AOC and Bernie are doing is so great for the left, because that's exactly what we needed. Someone needed to think in the, basically they needed, we were talking so much about intertwining religion and politics. But I think the key to success is finding a way to make capitalism and politics work together. I am not saying this is the future I want for our country, but if we are talking merely about how do we see success, we have to brand being a Democrat as something that people want to buy into. That's it. That's the answer right there. Now, how does one do that ethically? Well, I spent my whole mayoral campaign thinking about that on my, and had, shed many tears over that, my guys. I have still not come to a conclusion. So I know the destination. I don't know the ethical route to the destination. We shall see. Lahmeyer is now lead pastor at Sheridan Church in Tulsa, a non-denominational charismatic church. Now, charismatic Christianity is a certain type of Christianity. I was reading about it a lot. A lot of televangelists, I think, are this. Again, I had to do a lot of studying about these different types of Christianity to even do this interview, but just to kind of, if you guys want to read up more, that would be what you would be reading up on. With a history of giving rise to mega pastors, Kenneth Copeland began his ministry at Sheridan, Lahmeyer says. The belief system promoted at Lahmeyer's church is both fundamentalist. The Bible is the inspired, infallible, incorruptible, and authoritative word of God, and end times. We believe in the imminent and personal return of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Charismatic Christians like Lahmeyer also hold that the realm of angels and demons is literal and, as the pastor puts it, overlaps with our modern political world. In Lahmeyer's depiction, the spiritual realm is just as real as the physical realm that we see and feel and touch and hear. Lahmeyer insists that when Lucifer was cast out of heaven, he took a third of the angels with him, and that they're still here today. When people say things like that, I actually after speak, I do think that he thinks that, sometimes for me, the first step to when I'm figuring something out is do I actually believe that this person believes this? And I'm like, I kind of do for him, But I also think that there are, I think that there are some religious beliefs that may be hard for some of us to grasp that I think he truly believes. I also do think that worldly things mean more than he lets on. I don't want to speak for somebody else. This is just my assessment. And I'm not even saying that's bad. I'm just saying denying it is bad. I'm very open about I'm interested in fame, I'm very open about it. I have a plan for it. I want fame to me is power, and with power, you have the potential to do good. I feel the same way about money. Like, I think it's important that women earn money so that women can have autonomy in the world, especially when you live in a capitalist nation. But some people think money is inherently evil. Some people think fame is inherently evil. I think fame is inherently toxic. But I think that you also can mentally prepare to put yourself into tough situations. Similarly, like the way I definitely did a lot of preparation to mentally put myself into running for mayor. The pastor and his co-religionists believe that demons and angels remain locked in spiritual warfare, and that the outcomes of that holy conflict make themselves manifest in U.S. politics. This is a battle between good and evil, and we have to engage in that fight, Lahmeyer insists. And also, part of the reason I believe that he believes this is that's why I had him tell me the story, as you'll see, of how and why he became religious. I think when you hear how and why someone becomes religious, that can kind of say, like, is this something I like? When something gets you out of a bad spot, I do think rather than just being like born into it, I think you actually are going to be more connected to that thing. In the pastors with us or against us worldview, the political left is infested with Luciferians. As evidence, Lahmeyer points to Democratic support of abortion, which he calls murdering babies inside their mother's womb. Well, we knew that was going to be the case. Same-sex marriage and the mainstream acceptance of trans identity. The gender confusion that they're pumping upon children, Lahmeyer claims, that is Luciferian. Speaking to Rolling Stone, Lahmeyer hastens to clarify that he is not advocating for physical violence, and that when I say war and fight, our weapons are spiritual. As recently as August, however, he suggested that a spiritual battle with the left could escalate into an actual civil war. Through his fundamentalist lens, Lahmeyer sees top Democrats as in league with the devil, including the outgoing Speaker of the House, an observant Catholic. You're either a friend of God or an enemy of God, Lahmeyer says of Nancy Pelosi. If she feared God, there is no way she would push things that are so anti-God. Christian nationalism, which he's contrasted with the godless globalism of the left, is increasingly central to Lahmeyer's identity. Lahmeyer has declared that the purpose of America was to form a Christian nation, and on Election Day this November, he implored those heading to the polls to vote for Christian nationalism today. Speaking to Rolling Stone, Lahmeyer softens this view a bit. I'm going to push for Christian leaders because we do need Christian leaders in the realm, he says. But to say that every position would be occupied by a Christian, that's impossible. This is a representative republic. And I will say, he knew what he was walking into with me. And he definitely seemed to soften based on other, articles and materials I had read about him in preparation. And while I do believe that was a tactic, I do think it was a smart tactic, right? If you're going to go into spaces where you know that you disagree religiously and socially on almost everything with the person that you're going to be speaking to, but you are willing to go into that space, and obviously his objective would be, number one, sell his book, and then number two, bring other people, get other people to know and love Jesus Christ the way he does. So the way you're want to do that is to be calm and to seem level-headed and to not be combative. So again, while I don't agree with him on many things, most things, the tactic that he's going about sharing his views with, we can learn from this. It's smart. Such deference for the outcomes of democracy and fair elections, however, does not comport with Lahmeyer's fanatical embrace of the big lie that election fraud denied Donald Trump re-election in 2020. Lahmeyer refuses to recognize that Joe Biden is the rightful occupant of the White House and insists on calling him the former vice president of the United States. The big lie was the driving force behind, but also, does this not remind us of 2016 when all the liberals were saying, not my president, and I was walking around saying, no, he's literally everyone's president. That's how being president works. Again, if we're trying to take down one side, we have to really recognize where we have a lot of similarities. The big lie was the driving force between Lahmeyer's 2022 primary challenge of Senator Lankford. That contest, Lahmeyer says, arose from his disgust for the senator's about-face on January 6th. Before the insurrection, Lankford had promoted baseless allegations of fraud. Indeed, Lankford was on the Senate floor objecting to the counting of Electoral College votes when the Capitol was overrun. But when the Senate reconvened in the aftermath of the violence, Lankford appeared chastened. He dropped his election objections and voted to certify Biden's victory. Later, in his role as a member of the commission marking the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa race riot, Lankford apologized to Black Oklahomans for casting doubt on the validity of votes coming out of predominantly Black communities like Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Detroit. Lahmeyer came to see Lankford as an absolute coward, a traitor, and a rhino of the highest order. What the fuck does rhino mean?
Republican in name only.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Who he argued stabbed our president right in the chest. As a candidate, he promised that upon his arrival in Washington, D.C., Jackson Lahmeyer will shout it. The 2022 election was a stolen election. Lahmeyer portrayed the incumbent as weak and overly solicitous to the state's Black voters. Unlike James Lankford, Lahmeyer posted on Facebook, "I do not suffer from white guilt." It always, I find it rather confusing. And again, I'm about to make a bit of a blanket statement here, but I find it confusing why a lot of these Christian nationalists are so fucking racist. When you think about America and you think of where you actually have a better chance of getting people to agree with you that maybe there should be a Christian nation run by God, Black people would be a better audience for you. It's, Black people, they, if we're going about all the white people and all the Black people, like you have a bigger, like, I think you have a greater chance of speaking to someone, religiously, and having Black voters come to your side if you just wouldn't be so fucking racist. That seems extremely counterproductive, but that's where the white nationalism comes into play, that no one's going to speak out loud, right? Unlike James Lankford, Lahmeyer posted on Facebook, "I do not suffer from white guilt." For proof of his own backbone, he pointed to his church's defiance of COVID health restrictions. "We never enforced the masks. We never enforced social distancing. We never shut down." He even launched a petition against vaccine mandates and offered to sign religious vaccine exemption forms in exchange for donation to his ministry. Oh, I did want to bring that up to him. I thought that was very interesting. We went through so much, though, in the interview, but I always think in exchange for donation to the ministry is a fun caveat. The race for office was a bust. Lahmeyer earned barely a quarter of the primary vote against the man he decried as Oklahoma's Mitt Romney and alleged lacked the testicular fortitude to debate him. I mean, listen, the screen went black, Mike. I don't know if that matters. For all the maybe qualms I definitely have with Pastor Lahmeyer, to say that he, look at someone's first race politically, especially against an incumbent, and to kind of make fun of him for earning barely a quarter of the vote. I think earning like barely a quarter of the vote in your first race against an incumbent, I actually think that's pretty good. I really do.
Especially a guy who lacked the testicular fortitude to debate him. You don't have a chance to present your ideas versus his. It's
right.
Like, how are the people going to know? You just vote for the name you know.
Yeah, like I actually think that performance for your first election is quite good. And for a man as young as he was, like I think that was good. But the Lahmeyer campaign proved remarkable for another reason. It helped to spark the Reawaken America tour, the right-wing conspiratorial roadshow often compared to a MAGA circus. Before he committed to a run for Senate, Lahmeyer's ranting about election fraud on a podcast caught the attention of a fellow conspiracy theorist, General Michael Flynn, who tracked down Lahmeyer's phone number and called him. We have like a 2-hour conversation, and he says, "You're going to run against James Lankford. I had not made up my mind," Lahmeyer recalls, "but a good general gives an order, and I said, yes, sir. Now, this paragraph is so interesting. And when I tell you, I think the DSA 100%, and I've been thinking about this for many months, had a conversation like this with Zoran Mamdani, I would bet $1 million on it. Okay. And again, that's nothing against Jackson Lahmeyer, and that's nothing against Zoran Mamdani. It's just how politics works. Politics it works so much like entertainment in that there are these big entities or powerful, rich individuals who are literally conducting their version of Star Search constantly and looking for who is going to be the next rising star in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, the same way Comedy Central will look at comedians and pluck who they think is the person who they are going to thrust upon you, and you don't even know what's happening to you. But a lot of the comedians you don't like because you like them. You like it because you like these comedians because it was planned for a long time that you were going to like these comedians. And God, I have a really good example on the tip of my tongue. I don't want to out this person. Because I think the person is genuinely talented and has worked very hard. But if you think they just came out of nowhere and we're not basically in this developmental process, you're wrong. And the developmental process is the same as it happens for entertainers, happens for people in politics. It is.
Is this comedian on the Riyadh Comedy Festival?
On the what?
Riyadh Comedy Festival.
No, but that's a funny question. Flynn even traveled to Tulsa to join Lahmeyer when he announced his run. The pastor held his press conference at the offices of a member of his church, Tulsa entrepreneur Clay Clark. That was the first time Flynn and Clark had met, and it was through that connection, obviously, the Reawaken America tour was birthed, Lahmeyer says. During his senatorial bid, Lahmeyer forged a near family relationship with General Flynn. He's become a lot like a dad, he says. Lahmeyer also got hooked up with infamous Trump bagman Roger Stone, who advised the closing weeks of the campaign. We didn't pull off a victory, obviously, but Roger and I became very close. So, he had Roger Stone, I had Stephen Jenkins. No surprise, Lahmeyer also became a fixture on Clark's traveling Reawaken tour. He sought the company and support of infamous right-wing political figures, including Wendy Rogers, the Oath Keeper, Arizona State Senator, and Rudy Giuliani, while becoming chummy with Trump's sons, Eric and Don Jr., even snapping pics with the dear leader himself. In short, Lahmeyer has been immersed in an insular, far-right vortex where clout is gained by espousing even more extreme and conspiratorial beliefs, most of which have little to do with Jesus. Lahmeyer has claimed, for example, that Black Lives Matter is a domestic terrorist organization that was founded by witchcraft-practicing lesbians. Oh, I forgot to tell him I was Wiccan. I really wanted to bring it up at one point, but we were chatting away. He's insisted that the January 6th defendants are political prisoners and the true act of violence against U.S. democracy occurred on Election Day 2020. The insurrection did not take place on January 6th, but it actually took place on November 3rd. Ranting against the supposed abuses of big tech and big pharma, he's alleged that YouTube is ran by communists that hate life-saving treatments like ivermectin. Oh, there you go, Michael. Budesonide and I used to say this a lot. Now I forgot how to say it.
Hydroxychloroquine?
Chloroquine. Yeah. I was like, oh God, I remember the time when I had to say that every week. More consistent with his far-right religious beliefs, the pastor has reserved special spite for queer Americans. There is no such thing as a trans kid, he's tweeted. There are only adults who have abused and brainwashed their children. Lahmeyer baselessly alleges that what he mocks as the LGBTQXYZ movement, I mean, that's hack, aspires to add pedophilia.
A pastor's hack?
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, I called him hack during the interview for the trans sports things. I was like, don't be hack. Come on.
Because obviously.
Movement aspires to add pedophilia and bestiality under the rainbow flag. That's hack too. Going into fucking animals is hack. These people are sick and are not going to stop until they are stopped. In his campaign, Lahmeyer attempted to pander to the QAnon set, posting that you got to get votes where you can get them, posting that the real pandemic in our world today is pedophilia and child traffickers. And it's so interesting to see this article from 2022 because it's like, yo, this stuff has only gotten hotter and hotter. release the Epstein files. But he soon got a taste of his own conspiratorial medicine when QAnons turned on him and baselessly accused him of being a trafficker because of an innocent photo he posted of one of his kids wearing red shoes, which the Anons mistook for satanic symbolism. I sometimes like conspiracy theorists remind me a lot of girls who listen to Guys We Fucked, who are looking for reasons or signs that a guy likes them when the guy obviously doesn't like him. Lahmeyer today tells Rolling Stone that QAnon is, quote, total BS. What do Lahmeyer's trollish online ways have to do with promoting God? To proclaim the gospel, people are going to be offended, he insists. Their feelings are going to be hurt, and we're so afraid of making sure everybody feels comfortable, making sure everybody likes us, that we have watered down the truth. He insisted that his atomic takes are him just proclaiming the truth. I pressed Lahmeyer on perhaps his most radioactive declaration that Alex Jones did nothing wrong. Isn't profiting by tormenting the parents of children of slain in massacre wrong? That's just written wrong. Lahmeyer snaps back. He did not massacre those children. That he should be fined the size of a country's annual GDP for freedom of speech. Freedom of speech gives you the right to be wrong. In a normal political, but then there's things like slander and defamation. All right, we're not going to get into Alex Jones right now, but in a normal political environment, an extremist like Jackson Lahmeyer wouldn't be welcome anywhere near a presidential political campaign, much less be trusted as a conduit to the broader faith community. But these are far from normal times. In a moment where Nazi stands like Ye and Nick Fuentes are yanking the Overton window widely to the right, Lahmeyer and his newfound proximity to power have gone all but unnoticed. For his part, Lahmeyer insists Pastors for Trump is here for the long haul and all in for the former president. The group has scheduled monthly prayer calls starting in January and projected through November 2024, the month of the general election. We have a common goal, and that is to save America, he says. And we believe one of the ways that happens is by getting Donald Trump back in the White House. And now, this leads me to, that can kind of be like this article was basically to serve as the counterpoint to Pastor Lahmeyer until we have Brian Silva on from Americans United. But also, there was a part of me that was like, I could see this guy really being a rising star in the Republican Party. And so I wanted you guys to see him first here. Again, it is... I know there are not enough hours in the day to be as informed as we need to be to keep safe, but I'm telling you, I really think keeping tabs on, rising stars in both the right and the left is extremely, extremely important. All right, now we have a guest interview on today's show. Please welcome to Without a Country, Pastor Jackson Lahmeyer, everybody. Hello, Pastor Lahmeyer. Can you see me?
I can see you. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule. I know you're busy. I saw you're busy on Twitter calling Hillary Clinton to Jezebel. So we'll get into it. Listen, I'm a stand-up comedian, but I also recently ran for mayor of New York City. So I think that we have a lot in common.
Oh, I love it.
And while I think, our religious and social beliefs might be vastly different, this show is about hearing each other and talking to the other side. And that's what I would like to do with you today. So if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself, some, things that you find, people should know about you before you begin a conversation, and why you were interested on being on this show today.
Yeah, well, the most important thing about me is I got a great wife. Her name is Kendra, and we've got 5 kids from the ages of 5 to 15. So we're busy. She's much more busy than I am, but we serve as the pastors of Sheridan Church here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We also have a campus in Oklahoma City. And during the 2024 campaign, I served as the head of Pastors for Trump, which was the coalition of pastors in that election. And we turned out evangelicals en masse, helping push the president over the finish line. And so that's a little bit about me. I also love sports. I know it's probably way off topic, but I'm a big basketball guy.
That's fine. My team is the Knicks. What's your team?
I'm a Oklahoma City Thunder fan.
Makes sense.
So, we just won. We just won.
Congratulations. You are in Oklahoma right now, so this all makes sense. I'm in New York City. Do you know anything about the format of this show, or?
A little bit. I went and checked it out just a little bit, and
Okay.
excited to be on. I think it'll be fun.
That's good. I just like to make sure people know what they're walking into. This is certainly not. I'm not into the gotcha format. Okay, great. And now you said that Pastors for Trump, which was you founded that. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So is this something that you are still the head of today?
Yeah. So it is still an organization today. Obviously, we're not campaigning.
Right.
We won the election.
Right.
And so I work with the White House Faith Office as well as the National Faith Advisory Board. And so, I'm just having a lot of fun, enjoying life, staying busy. And, that's kind of a little bit about me.
And what does it look like? What was the process of you becoming a member of the White House Faith Board? What did that look like? What did you have a conversation with President Trump to receive that role?
Yeah. So during the campaign, the president made a promise to the pastors that if he was to be elected again, he would do something that no other president has ever done, and that is to launch a standalone faith office in the White House. Now, other presidencies, they have had faith initiatives. George Bush had one. Trump had one during his first term, but this is now a standalone office in the White House, in the West Wing, actually, with a direct report to the president. And so I work with the White House Faith Office. I serve on the National Faith Advisory Board, and Pastor Paula White and Jenny Korn are the ones there in the White House, living in D.C., handling the day-to-day action of it. And so I'm just a part of it, and, get to be a fly on the wall at the White House, which is I've spent more time at the White House this year than I ever thought I would in my entire life. So for me, just to be a fly on the wall is quite exciting.
Right. And then, so the White House Faith Board, all members are Christian. Am I correct in saying that?
No. So the faith office is designed to protect religious liberty.
Okay.
And so religious liberty extends to all religions and all people of faith. Now, obviously,
Right.
The vast majority of people in America, they're evangelical Christians. And so you're going to have a proportion to that in the faith office. But it's not just to protect Christians or advance Christian values. It is to protect people of faith.
Okay, and that's something that you believe in? As a Christian, you still respect and honor other faiths?
Oh, my goodness, yes. One of the foundational elements of the American experiment is that just as nobody should get in between a person and their doctor, nobody should get in between a person and God, especially the government. And so religious liberty extends to all people of faith, all religions. Now, obviously, I'm biased. I'm a Christian pastor, and so I believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and obviously I stick to that message, but the right of religious liberty is extended to all people of all faiths.
Right. Now, you previously just said that the vast majority of people in the United States are evangelical, but only approximately 23% of American adults identify as evangelical, according to my research. Whereas, if you were to say the vast majority of Americans are Christian, at about 62%, that makes sense. But why did you just say the vast majority of Americans identify as evangelical? Because that's not true.
Based upon religions. So if you look at different religions and you categorize Christianity from Catholic to Mormon to evangelical, evangelicals are the largest population segment among people of faith in the United States.
So you're breaking it up into specific types of Christianity. Okay, that's how you're doing.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, fair. And just for some background on where you went to school, I know that you attended Oral Roberts University. And I looked up who Oral Roberts was and learned a little bit about him because I was not familiar with that university. And I saw that he was someone who spread the theory of what they call prosperity theology, a belief that financial blessing and physical well-being are always the word of God for people who honor God. Is that something that you also subscribe to, or is that merely something that Oral subscribed to?
I've kind of described myself as a quasi-prosperity gospel preacher.
Okay.
I believe that God wants people to prosper. But prosperity is not necessarily just finances. I believe that God wants us to prosper in our relationships, that God wants us to prosper in our health. That doesn't mean we don't go through challenging times. All of us, whether you're a Christian, a non-Christian, we all experience hardship, heartbreaks, heartaches, all that kind of stuff. And so I would call myself a somewhat of a prosperity preacher, not to the extent that Oral was. Oral, that was kind of what he was known for. I did go to Oral Roberts University and had a blast there. I did my undergrad and my master's work there. And, something interesting about ORU is the professors in the theology department range. I had a Roman Catholic professor. I had a Greek Orthodox professor. I had Baptist teachers. I had Pentecostal teachers. So it was a variety of professors that I had.
Okay. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of, it's easier to have a conversation when we understand what your religious beliefs are at the core. And so, whereas some people who, follow prosperity theology believe that, if someone is poor, they just haven't made atonement to in the proper way. That's not something you believe. You don't think that poor people are doing something wrong religiously to keep themselves poor, or do you?
Not in all cases, by no stretch. Some of the most godly people I know are some of the poorest people I know. And some of the most ungodly people I know are some of the wealthiest people I know. So it just varies.
You want to name names?
Oh, I can't. Yeah, come on. You can't have me do that. Come on.
I wouldn't expect you to, but I would be a bad interviewer if I didn't ask. And so, just for anyone who isn't familiar with Christianity, because I think we've seen, especially now, with more faith being exposed through politics or the intertwinement of Christianity and politics seemingly becoming stronger. I mean, especially in the past couple of weeks, I think some people who are not Christian are confused what Christianity is or means today, because I think if you ask most people, they would summarize it into something like, loving God, love yourself as love your neighbor as yourself, that a good Christian demonstrates mercy and forgiveness and service to others. Are those all still things that you believe describe what Christianity is?
Well, you hit the nail on the head.
I did my research. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's exactly it.
Right, but
obviously there's a lot more to it, but to summarize, that's a very good summary.
And is there anything additional that you feel like is important, especially today? Because I know there's been a large conversation, and part of what, the publicist who represents you when they reached out, part of your press kit speaks about this war on Christianity, which you hear a lot of Christians speak about. So I just want to clarify what this war is, because if you just look at that, and we're talking politically because this is a politically show, even though I know you believe that religion and politics are intertwined. I think a lot of people on the left would agree with, forgiveness and being of service to others, whether or not they believe in Jesus Christ or God. So is there anything additional that we're missing? And how do you feel this war on Christianity is taking place? What is it? Can you describe it?
It's twofold. There is the governmental side, and then there's the cultural side.
Okay.
So we'll deal with the cultural side first.
Sure.
Since 2018, so in 2018, there was 50 attacks upon Christian churches in the United States of America. So that's less than one per week. And, you never want any house of worship to be attacked, but I'm talking specifically Christian churches. There was 50 attacks in 2018. Well, that number has skyrocketed over 700% in 2024. There was 415 attacks on Christian churches. That's more than one per day. So there's the cultural side of churches being under attack, Christians being persecuted, culturally speaking. Then we shift over to the government. And this is something that the White House Faith Office has really focused in on. President Trump launched the Anti-Christian Bias Task Force because what we've discovered under Barack Obama, accelerated under Joe Biden, there was a targeting of people of faith, specifically Christians, that was coming through the DOJ, the FBI, the ATF, but especially the IRS. And so one of the things on the website of the White House is all of these different cases and examples of people of faith, primarily Christians, who were targeted, whether it was through the educational system, but primarily through the IRS, like Grand Canyon University receiving the largest fine ever by the IRS. President Trump undid that. Liberty University has a similar story. And so there has been a targeting of people of faith by our government, which is why President Trump obviously launched the Anti-Christian Bias Task Force. So it's twofold. There's the cultural targeting, then there is the governmental targeting.
And so you think it's specifically like culturally, you're most concerned with like the violence aspect, and then through the government, through the financial aspect, and that's how you feel the attack is coming. Because when you read about, when you Google or you research and you look into articles about what the war on Christianity means, a lot of people who believe that there is a war on Christianity talk about things like abortion and marriage between anyone but a man or a woman, people being trans. Those are three of the things that come up most when I looked up the war on Christianity. Do you think those are also?
That's an attack on, say, Christian values, but I would like to say with abortion, that's not so much an attack on Christianity as much as it is an attack on life. You brought up, I think you brought up same-sex marriage. Mm-hmm. That's a Christian value of marriages between one man and one woman.
Right.
But that would be more of an attack on the value, but on the attack of the institution of marriage. And then the transgender issue, obviously a Christian value, which is also a common sense value for, the history of humanity. We've always known that there was two genders. And then we went through like a 4-year period of time where we thought there may be a whole lot more. And now we're coming back to the common sense of there's two genders. And so I wouldn't necessarily say those are specific attacks upon Christianity as much as the values. However, the attack on Christianity comes when you say, I believe that marriage is between one man, one woman. I believe that the unborn have the right to life. I believe that there are two genders. Well, all of a sudden within our culture, you are demonized, you are attacked, you are labeled terms that were used against, say, Charlie Kirk, that you're a Hitler in the making, that you're a Nazi, all these different terms that get thrown out at you because of your belief system, which are Christian values.
Right. And so I would push back and say, I actually have no problem with people saying that they only believe that marriage should exist between a man and a woman, or that they don't think abortion would be a choice for them. The problem, and I think I speak for a lot of individuals, is that it's when other people's Christian values start to leak on people who are not Christian and do not hold those values. Because, just moments ago, you said that on this, in the faith office, there were people of different faiths. So if your faith says this is okay, or some kind of faith leader in another religion says this is fine, or you do not follow any faith and you have your own moral structure, and in your life that's something that you want to do, why would other people have to live by Christian values? It just logically doesn't make sense, because I really respect that a lot of the things you talk about are like, the freedom of religion and the freedom of speech. So it becomes not free for non-Christians when we have to live by Christian values.
Well, I think you have to first realize America was formed upon Christian values. That's an indisputable reality.
But also religious freedom.
Of course, religious freedom, but religious liberty doesn't give you the right to commit crimes in the name of religion.
So you think, but you think so?
Mutilating a child has always been a crime. That has always been a crime.
I wasn't even going to try that one with you because I knew that there were and that's fine. More so like same-sex marriage. You would describe that as an actual crime, not just something that goes against Christian values.
I wouldn't describe that
even
as
though
a
it's
crime.
legal.
I would describe that as, obviously, according to Scripture, as a sin. But I wouldn't describe that as a crime. Now, throughout our country's history, it had always been a crime until recently. So I wouldn't describe that as a crime by any stretch of the means. But abortion, I would, because I believe that is murder. And
No, I get it.
religious liberty
I
does not
understand.
give anyone the right to murder, especially innocent. You know, if the government decides to exert capital punishment upon, a serial killer or whatever that may be, that's a separate issue. But taking away the right of life to an unborn baby, that doesn't, just because, well, that's not my value, that doesn't matter. That is to me, this is obviously, I'm coming from a Christian perspective.
Got it.
That baby has a right to life as much as I do.
So would you, if this was something that was introduced, as a piece of legislation, would you be a fan of legislation that said women who abort fetuses could be eligible for capital punishment?
No, not capital punishment by any stretch. One, you eliminate the option for a woman to have an abortion. You eliminate that option. This is coming from my perspective because, listen, I can speak to this also because I became a dad at 17 years of age. I was the whole statistics of teen pregnancy and all that kind of stuff. And many people advised you should have her to have an abortion. She's 16, you're 17, the child's life's going to be over and all that kind of stuff. So I can speak to that. But no, capital punishment for that. No, I just don't think that a woman should have the right to terminate the life of a separate individual who is that unborn baby inside her womb.
Right, but we know historically that even when abortion is religion, people find ways to get abortions. Sure. So so you can't just say, I don't think the person should have the right.
They'd be breaking the law, then they could be prosecuted for whatever that is.
And then if they broke the law, and would then capital punishment be on the table?
I can't imagine that being on the table for our legal system.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't support that personally.
Okay.
So
you're on record.
But, if you were to make abortion, completely illegal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then if a woman went and had an abortion, then it would be obviously illegal and she would be breaking the law. And then at that point, there would be consequences for doing that, whatever that is. That's out of my realm of what would be legislation in regards to that.
And do you think the person, do you think there should be some kind of a punishment for the male partner if the male partner was also in agreement that the abortion should take place? Or should it only be on the shoulders of the woman?
Well, the male cannot have an abortion.
No, I understand, but they could
exerts.
finance one. They could finance one. They could attend. They could attend the abortion with the woman.
Well, listen, if you're financing it, now we're playing a hypothetical right now. We're playing the hypothetical that abortion is illegal, and so if you were to finance an illegal activity, well, obviously, you would be held responsible for it.
Okay. You also talk a lot, and I've read a lot of articles and watched a lot of your videos. So correct me if any of these do not reflect how you actually feel. I want to be fair here, but you have said that we are in a spiritual war between good and evil. A lot of wars happening, a lot of attacks. So who's the good and who's the evil? Can you describe? Are these demographics? Are they ideas?
They're ideas. So people can cling to good ideas. People can cling to evil ideas. And then if you act upon them, you act towards good, you act towards evil. And so good and evil is not political parties. Good and evil is not ethnicities, age, or anything like that. Good comes from God, and evil is something that the devil and demons and sin inspires. And so, it's not a Republicans are good and Democrats are bad. I know a lot of Republicans that are not very good.
Sure. I mean, I'm glad that you said that the good and evil do not describe political parties, because I think in the past 24 hours, I looked through your Instagram and you shared a clip where you say, and I quote, I just say to the enemy, look out, because Turning Point USA isn't going anywhere. And in that, it feels like the enemy are the Democrats. It feels like the enemy are people who did not agree with Charlie Kirk. But I want who is the enemy? Because right there, the enemy is described as some type of person, like the enemy, would not be an idea, or is that what you're?
Well, I can pinpoint a few. The radical left in this country are an enemy of this country right now. I mean, the violence.
Every member, or just people who are
Of
violent?
course, not every member. The people that are doing it.
Doing
the people that are doing the mass shootings. The people that are.
But it's not. But it's not. It's not just one side that's doing mass shootings. Mass
Very
shootings.
one-sided right now.
It's an America.
Very one-sided.
Because of who we are not, because of Charlie Kirk's alleged shooter?
No. We got the Minnesota school shooter. You go through the Nashville Christian school shooter, and you could just go on and on and on.
Well, you certainly
the
can.
Political
But I mean,
violence is pretty one-sided. Now, that doesn't mean
definitely
there's
not
crazies on the right.
It's
that
definitely
doesn't mean
not.
there's not crazies on, but it's vast majority right now in this country at this time.
That's just
the
not.
vast majority
That's
is coming
not
from the left.
true. That's not true. I mean,
It's very much true.
You just brought up Minnesota, and you didn't talk about Melissa Hortman being and her husband and her dog being gunned down in their home. That wasn't the left. What?
Let's use a microcosm here. 2020, George Floyd, who's a criminal. George Floyd is not a hero. He's a criminal. George Floyd dies. Nobody wants George Floyd to die, but he did die. He's no hero though. He's a criminal. And
I believe he like stole a Lucy, which is a single cigarette.
He also put a gun up to a pregnant woman, her belly.
Okay.
That's all over. I mean, that's a known fact. George Floyd dies, and nobody would want that for anybody. But George Floyd dies, and you got $2 billion worth of damage to U.S. cities in one summer. That's done by the radical left. Charlie Kirk, who is a good man, not a criminal. Charlie Kirk gets assassinated, and you won't find one riot. You won't find one Target getting looted. You won't find one city burning. Those are two very different value systems that played out in action. Those are two very different value systems. And that's why I say the violence, it's one-sided.
The protests after George Floyd, that was not mass shootings, though. We somehow went from mass shootings to the Black Lives Matter protests. Those are different things.
Radical left.
So you're just talking about, so that was just like that made you have enough with the radical left.
Well, the idea that is a part of the radical left. I mean, it's played out in like the transgender movement has been a movement of death. Look at the suicide rates among those who are a part of that demographic, and then look at the volume of mass. A very small portion of our society is committing a very large percentage of mass shootings. That's a problem. And so,
wait, I'm sorry. What group is committing a large volume of mass shootings?
Transgenders. Transgender movement.
Moments before. First of all, why are you calling it a movement? It's not a movement. A gender identity
I would say it's very much a movement.
Can you describe why? Yeah. Why? So why would you describe it as a movement?
Well, I would describe MAGA as a movement.
Me too.
I would describe the transgender idea as it's a relatively new movement, and it is a movement, and they're not heroes. These are people that have a mental illness that needs severe help. And what we have done, instead of helping them, we've hindered them, and they're miserable. Look at their suicide rates. Look at the volume of mass shootings. These people need help. By celebrating them and saying, oh, you were born biologically a male, but you think that you're a female. We've not helped them in that. These people, they're miserable. And what we have done is a disservice to that demographic of people. They need help. But instead, we have celebrated them. We have essentially rolled out the red carpet before them as opposed to actually helping them. And the violence is there. It's indisputable.
Well, so something I agree with is that no one, just because of how they identify, is a hero. That's a concept that I would agree with. And I think sometimes because people are doing something or because people are something that is frowned upon by society, the left does have a problem with elevating people to a hero status when it's undeserved. That's something that we can agree on. First of all, as far as transgender people being new, it's new that we talk about it in the way that we do now. The existence of someone who identifies as not the biological sex they were born as is as old as the Roman Empire.
Sure.
So
it's been around forever.
So it's not a new concept. But it's become in largely in part a bigger conversation because of Republicans and conservatives. It's a topic that you guys just seem obsessed with when it's a very small percentage of people. And so if you truly believe that being transgender is a mental illness, I don't believe that, but I can meet you there. If you believe that, you think this is a group of people who need help, why is the Republicans' version of help taking their rights away, not allowing them to serve the country in the military?
What rights?
The rights to exist as a human.
A man can't compete in a women's sport. I mean, I've got daughters. I've got
the women's sports thing. As a stand-up comedian, the women's sports fight is so hack at this point. No, I'm talking more about things like, not being able to identify in a certain way on a passport, or, it was tossed out that people who identify as transgender might not be able to get passports. Those kinds of things. There always seems to be introduction of bills or an attack on their rights in that way.
Passport thing. I have no idea the passport thing.
It's like this week, yes. I
don't care about the passport thing. What I care about is
you need a passport to be able to travel.
No, I'm saying I don't see the point in saying a transgender can't have a passport. That I don't see the point in that. I don't know where that is. But in regards to the rights that they're losing, I can't imagine any rights that they're losing other than, no, if you're a biological male, you will not compete in sports against females. It's just like, if you consider that losing a right, well, then they've lost the right.
Again, that part doesn't really concern me. That's like, it happens so infrequently, and I think we can go across it when we cross the bridge when we need to get there. I mean, and earlier you said that transgender people are committing mass shootings at an extremely high rate. This is literally the conversation that was part of the conversation that was being had by the audience member with Charlie Kirk right before he was assassinated, and the audience member corrects him and says, "I looked into this, and it was 5 individuals." With the amount of mass shootings that we have in this country, why perpetuate that this is some kind of a problem when it's 5 individuals? I agree that mass shootings in general are a problem, but to specifically place the burden of mass shootings on the shoulders of transgender individuals, it doesn't make sense. Why? We have the numbers. It's not a mystery.
Who's the person that assassinated Charlie Kirk?
Not a transgender person.
Yeah, but you got to finish it.
So you're saying because they're supposedly were living with a partner who is transgender. Okay, so even if we take that into account, that would make the number go up to 6.
To take into account.
Okay, so now we're at 6.
You're up more than that. Where are you getting the number 5?
I'm getting it from a Turning Point USA conversation. I'm getting it from your side.
True.
Well, yeah.
That doesn't make. I mean,
clip it.
It doesn't make it true because somebody said there was only 5.
I mean, present the research. Where are these staggering numbers? What are your sources? Where's the data? Where's the Pew or Gallup polling?
I'm not giving a number. I'm saying what I see.
So you're just saying it's a large amount, but you have no actual number. Is that what you're saying?
But neither do you. You're saying it's a small amount, but you have no number. 5.
I said 5, and then I changed it to 6.
I guarantee it's more than 5. I guarantee it's more than 5. There's been probably 5 this year.
Okay. Amount. Yeah, I mean, this is a Googleable thing. Do you not use Google? Is there a different Google that I should be using?
We use conservatives. We use DuckDuckGo.
No, I'm familiar with DuckDuckGo.
I'm just playing.
All right. So let's. I want just a couple more, and I know we only have about 10 minutes left. Okay. So
are you having fun?
Oh, I love conversations like this. I have no problem. Fun. I don't know. So, all right, let's get into some political stuff because I think it's very interesting that you ran for Senate in 2022 in the Republican primary in Oklahoma. All that information is correct, right? And one thing that was a part of your platform, which I again am very on board with, is that you were pro-term limits, and that's something that I agree on. This is true, correct? You are pro-term limits.
Oh my goodness, yes, and I found that this is a issue that us across the aisle can agree upon.
Yeah,
I've met so many Democrats as well as Republicans who identify one of the biggest things that could help fix the mess that we're in is term limits. Just as you probably don't want some conservative Republican to be there for 60 years, I don't want some liberal Democrat to be there for 60 years because I don't think it serves the interest of America at all.
I mean, to be fair, I don't want anyone, whether they are Democratic, Republican, Libertarian, to be in an office for decades and decades and decades. I don't think that's good, whether it's someone I voted for or someone I did not vote for, because we do not live in a monarchy. So you know, and you signed a paperwork saying that if you were elected, that you would be on board with term limits. Yeah. Okay, so all that's true. So what is your take then on Donald Trump's constant joking, his apparel available at the Trump Organization's online store saying Trump 2028? I mean, I see the Make America Great hat right behind you. It seems like that's something that is not even funny to joke about if you're someone who agrees with term limits.
Yeah, so first of all, President Trump is joking. Second of all, Trump 2028 could be, it doesn't have to be Donald Trump Sr., okay? Just always keep that in the back pocket.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the foreshadowing there. Chilling. And I think like even if it is a joke, and again, coming at this as a stand-up comedian, even if I can be like, all right, that's a joke, you think that like threatening an illegal third term is a responsible joke for the leader of the free world to be making?
Well, that's up to his decision making. He's doing it as a joke. He's not being serious at all. It does drive some people on the left a little bit crazy.
It should drive everyone crazy. You just said that the across the aisle term limits are an issue. So then
he's not running for a third term.
All right, again,
he's not running for a third term. And you can have if he does, have me back on the show.
All right. Well, yeah, you could be a reg for all I'm concerned. It doesn't matter to me. And also a part of your platform was transparency. Is that correct? Like especially financial transparency. So again, something I agree upon. I was very transparent with all the donations and what they were being used for during my mayoral campaign. It's extremely important. I think it's a great thing, but I saw that Pastors for Trump is specifically a dark money nonprofit that allows donors to have a high level of secrecy. So to me, how do those two things go together when you are someone who obviously values transparency? What's the secret? What are we hiding?
Well, when you're running for office, you're taking a public servant role. When I'm leading Pastors for Trump, it is not a public servant role. It is a 501c4. And so it's just like my church is a 501c3. Our donation records are not public. It's not that we're hiding anything. It's just they're not. And so when I was running for office, obviously, I mean, you know this, you are complying. When I was running, it was federal, so we had the FEC.
Right.
And, you know, every cent you spend is public record. Every dollar you raise, it's public record. But those are different organizations, and they're not needed to made public.
Right, but it's an organization that I get that it's a 501c4, but you are still the 501c4 exists because you are supporting someone who is elected to be a public servant. I mean, don't you think that's a little bit murky territory there? You don't?
That's the way our legal system is made. And when I ran for office, obviously, we were beyond transparent, and it was a good thing. I think it's a very good thing. But in regards to the church I pastor or the organization that I led, there's no need to make those things public. You do have donors that don't want to be publicly made known for their donations.
Certainly. Okay. I've also read that you said that the founding fathers were mostly pastors. Is that something you stand by?
I never said that.
You know, it's talked about a lot in a lot of articles about you. Okay, well then that's why I ask you before we go into any conversation.
Some of the founding fathers were very small number.
Which one? Because none of the main ones I looked into were pastors. Can you name who was a pastor?
There was two of them, and I'll have to get back to you on the names. There was two signers that were pastors.
Okay, so we're just doing people who signed. Okay, because I'm founding fathers. I'm thinking James Madison, Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, no. None of those guys were pastors.
Okay, then we can skip ahead. This was one of the most interesting quotes. And again, I want to make sure, I'm going to read it to you. You can tell me this was the headline of an actual article, though. So if you didn't say it, you need to contact the media that posted it. But apparently you said the Antichrist will be a political leader of Jewish descent. This is how the Jews will worship him. Did you say that?
Yeah, I did say that. That was in a biblical teaching that I was doing, going through the book of Revelation and looking at the book of Revelation. There will be an Antichrist. He's called the Beast in the book of Revelation. And
so this is when we're talking about the mark of the beast. Is that related?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there will be a false prophet that will point people to worship the beast whenever he comes on the scene. And so the Jews will recognize him as the Messiah. I recognize Jesus as the Messiah, but the Jews who do not believe in Jesus, they're currently looking for the Messiah to come.
Mm-hmm.
And so the book of Revelation tells us that the Jews will worship him. And the Jews are not going to worship a non-Jew as the Messiah, because one of the, prerequisites to be the Jewish Messiah, you got to be a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some biblical evidence in the Old Testament that he would come out of the tribe of Dan. And so a lot of it's just anytime you're dealing with end times theology, it's speculation. It's total speculation. But I'm just putting pieces together of how things may go. And so for me, I cannot imagine the religious Jews worshiping anyone other than a Jew as their Messiah.
Okay, so just to clarify, the Antichrist being a Jewish person or being whatever it is we're talking about, that is from like directly from the Bible. I'm not saying necessarily in those words, but that is from the Bible, or something that piecing together passages from the Bible you came up with on your own.
You're piecing passages. I mean, it's not original with me. This has been taught by many before me. But you're piecing things together of what would cause religious Jews to worship an individual as the Messiah. He's going to set himself up in the temple as God. And so knowing the Bible, the Jews are looking for a Jewish Messiah. They're not looking for an American president to be their savior. They're not looking for a Russian prime minister. They are looking for a Jew. And so the Antichrist is going to deceive the Jewish people for 3.5 years. And so that's where I came up with that is what makes sense to me. Now, it's not something that I would bet my salvation on.
Right. And I mean, but that you can teach whatever, you want when you're doing a sermon with your is a congregation. Sorry. But do you think, is that something that you say when you're outside of a religious setting ever? Because, I mean, when you just read that quote outside of a religious setting, it certainly seems like it could be something that would be anti-Semitic.
Oh, I know. I got accused of being an anti-Semite. Our church is one of the largest supporters of the nation of Israel. Financially, we are major supporters of the Jewish people because we believe in the Bible. And the Bible is very clear that as Christians, we're to support the Jewish people. And so that was a biblical teaching that people took, and they took it out and said, this guy's an anti-Semite, when it's literally the exact opposite.
Right. I mean, I certainly wasn't accusing. I mean, I was saying, if you go out saying that, people are going to say you're anti-Semitic. Sure. I think that's
listen, I got hit pretty hard. Hit pretty hard.
And I mean, just, that you said that you're a supporter of Israel, but I mean, that, being Jewish and the Israeli state, like, they can be separate things. Sure. So just like
being an American and the U.S. government, those can be separate things.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned that Jewish people most likely wouldn't see the American president as their savior. I mean, do you think that anyone is or should see the president as their savior? I mean, that feels, aren't we not supposed to worship like regular people as saviors?
That's my point. That's why that's my point.
But I mean, you made it seem like it was Jewish specific. I mean, that seems like something that like the Christians shouldn't either. Yeah.
Religious Jews are specifically looking for the Messiah to appear. As Christians, we believe the Messiah has already appeared.
Yeah, no, I got
Jesus
that.
Christ.
I just thought, I thought you were perhaps using savior as something different than Messiah.
There's one savior. His name is Jesus.
It's the savior, not a savior. Got it.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. So final question, how do we wrap this up? I mean, I think we got through almost everything that I wanted to get through. I do want to give you a chance. The one thing we didn't talk about, and I'm guessing the reason that you are going on podcasts is to talk about your book that came out in May, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And so we can end with a conversation about that. Your book is called Chasing After the Wind. It came out in May, correct?
Yes, right here. Chasing After the Wind. It's doing very well. We're getting great reviews. A New Yorker that you probably like, Darryl Strawberry, wrote the foreword to the book for me. He played for the Mets and also
very familiar.
The Yankees, and he wrote the foreword of the book, and we're getting great reviews.
Is he a friend of yours? I did notice that he had written the foreword, and I didn't know that he was so involved in Christianity, quite frankly.
He's a very good friend of mine. He's a preacher. He comes and preaches at my church every year.
There you go.
And he's a great man.
Okay. And I mean, I read a little bit about what the book is about. I did not have time to read the book, but would it be correct in saying that Chasing After the Wind is about this people's search for happiness and how they are perhaps looking in the wrong places and looking through worldly means instead of through spirituality? Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, I mean, it's the one thing everyone's chasing. Everyone wants to be happy. Why do we do why do I eat Oreos late at night? Is it because they're good for me? No, they make me feel good. That's we all want to be happy. Unfortunately, we think that things like money or power or sex or whatever will make us happy. And it does for a moment, but then it's fleeting like the wind, and we're always chasing the wind, and we never actually catch it. This will make me happy. I get it. Doesn't make me happy. And so the point of the book, how can you find true happiness, joy, peace, and contentment in a very crazy world where we're bombarded with advertising and marketing? All advertisement is, this product will make you happy. You go and get it, and then you sell it at a garage sale 3 years later.
And so do you feel like did you write this book because you are still chasing happiness, or because you believe that you found what happiness is and you want to share that with others?
Still chasing, but I believe I've gotten a taste of it. And that is getting to know God. The more you get to know God, who is the happiest being there is, in the presence of God, there's the fullness of joy. So the more you get to know God, the more joy, true joy, not a circumstantial. When life is good, I'm happy. When life is bad, I'm not happy. That you can be happy even when life is not good. And so have I fully caught the wind? By no stretch of the means, and I say that in the book. But I think I've picked up on a few things that are helpful to people.
And was there a time in your life when you had not found God, or was this something that you were raised on?
Well, I was not always a Christian. It was whenever I became a dad at 17 that I gave my life to God, because, I hit rock bottom. I didn't know what I was going to do. Everyone was telling me, your life is over, man. Your life is done. And, God rescued me and gave me a brand new life. And now, I got 5 amazing kids, a great wife. I get to do a lot of fun things. And so my life wasn't over. God did a rescue mission in my personal life, and I experienced joy in the midst of even the hardship of becoming a teen dad.
And was there like a mentor, a friend told you about God? Like, how did you get this message? Did you go to some kind of did you find yourself in a church? Like what happened? I know you have to leave. I'm just curious how it happened.
I was watching local TV one night. And a preacher was on the TV, and I listened for probably like 3 minutes. No idea what he was talking about, but it sparked a little bit of hope in a hopeless teenager. And so I started going to his church, which was like a 45-minute drive for me every Sunday night. And that was how it happened. I just consistently was going on Sunday nights. And then I gave my life to Christ and completely surrendered to him, and, have been walking with him for many years since then.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad that you found that. And is there anything in closing that you would like to say to our listeners? Again, like the point of the show is kind of reading political stories from the far right, the far left, anywhere in between, and finding the truth and trying to make this country feel like one country again. So, is there any closing message that you have for our listeners?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I think things like this are important where we can converse and dialogue, and we don't have to end tonight by hating one another. We are both Americans who want the best for the United States. Now, we may have different paths that we believe would be best for our country.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you are not my enemy, and I hope I'm not your enemy.
Nothing you said today made you my enemy. I think I am good with having an open conversation. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your beliefs with us and taking the time. And if anyone wants to buy your book, again, it's called Chasing After the Wind. And where's the best place that they can get that? Is it?
Go to my website, jacksonlahmeyer.com. I'll send them a signed copy, or then go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, those places as well.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Pastor Jackson Lahmeyer, everybody. Thanks for being here. Have an excellent rest of your night. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye. All right, guys. So that was the interview with Pastor Jackson Lahmeyer. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I think he seems to want to share it also on his channels, which means his followers, I'm sure, will be attacking me. Christians. I don't want to say that though. Maybe they'll be nice. I don't know. Again, I don't want to. They can speak for themselves. But definitely comment and let me hear your thoughts, especially on YouTube, because we need to have a full conversation there. So first thing I want to say is about the White House Faith Office. He is correct in saying that the White House Faith Office did exist previously, and I did research on that. And he says that George W. Bush had a White House Faith Office, which is true. But I even want to go back a little bit further and say that Bill Clinton also had a White House Faith Office. And I think that's important to point out. So that would have been 1996 to 2001. It wasn't the White House Faith Office that we know today during Trump's administration, but it originated with Bill Clinton and has existed in variations for, 20 years, no matter if a Democrat or a Republican was in office. I think that's very important to know. In 1996, Bill Clinton created the charitable choice provisions as part of welfare reform, which opened the door for religious groups to receive federal funding for social services. In 2001, near the end of his presidency, he set up the White House Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives in a limited form, but it was really George W. Bush who expanded it into that full office. So George W. Bush, he's in office 2001 to 2009. He creates the White House Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives by executive order in 2001. The mission is to allow faith-based groups to compete for federal grants on the same basis as secular nonprofits. And there was a lot of criticism when he did that said that it blurred the separation of church and state. But, obviously his supporters are like, no, this just makes things equal for us. Then in 2009, we have Barack Obama in office. Barack Obama renames it the Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, and its focus shifted from promoting faith groups per se to building partnerships across religious and secular organizations. Obama's version included a diverse advisory council with representatives from Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, and a bunch of other secular organizations. Then, Donald Trump's first term, we see it. It's led by Paula White, who is Donald Trump's personal pastor, if you remember. And the focus is expanding religious liberty protections again. And, but caveat, especially for conservative Christian groups, okay? So it's getting a little bit more specific in ways that we hadn't previously seen. it definitely tilted towards evangelical Christian engagement. Joe Biden, we see it 2021 to 2025. He reestablished the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. His model was a lot more like Barack Obama's model. And there was a strong focus on COVID-19 response, refugee resettlement, and social equity. And now we see Donald Trump 2025 bringing this back. Now we have the White House Faith Office, which is a new structure, and it's different and distinct from what he did in his first term. This is led by Paula White Cain, Jennifer Korn, and Jackson Lane. And one conversation we had, is that, I'm pretty familiar with the White House Faith Office. We've talked about it a lot on here. And I really thought that all the faith leaders in this office were Christian. Pastor Lahmeyer said that was incorrect. And so and he said, no, there's representatives from all religions. I couldn't, do enough research in the moment. So I looked it up after now. And it was really tough to find, but I will say that apparently there are a couple other people who are not Christian, although they are small. And again, if it took this much Googling for me to even find them, that's a little bit of a, red flag right there. Because initially all that was coming up was like, yeah, there's no one really in main positions in the White House Faith Office that is anything but Christian. That being said, there was this loose language of it being a tenet of the office that they were supposed to kind of confer with religious leaders from other religions. And that was kind of all we're getting, which I thought was a cop-out. But then I did find 3 names of appointees. One was a really recent, though, of people who are not Christian. So we have Ismail Royer, a Muslim who serves as director of the Islam and Religious Freedom Action Team for the Religious Freedom Institute. We have Rabbi Meir Soloveitchik, a Jewish religious leader who serves as the director of the Strauss Center for Torah and Western Thought at Yeshiva University. And then we have Sheikh Hamza Youssef, an Islamic scholar and president of Zaytuna College. Those are the only names that were coming up. And I just read a little bit more about the last gentleman that I just brought up. It's 5pillarsuk.com. And it says 5 pillars, what are Muslims thinking? This is from May of this year. It says Donald Trump appoints Sheikh Hamza Youssef as religious advisor. The White House, is official statement. They said he's one of the leading proponents of classical learning in Islam. As I said, he's a co-founder of Zaytuna College, which is the first accredited Muslim liberal arts college in the United States. He is an advisor for the Center for Islamic Studies at Berkeley's Graduate Theological Union. For almost a decade, Hamza was consecutively ranked as the Western world's most influential Islamic scholar in the 500 most influential Muslims. During the first Trump administration, he served on the State Department's Commission on Unalienable Rights. And a lot of people, obviously, critics of this say, okay, it's like, well, you threw this Muslim guy on, but he's a Muslim guy who basically sides with you. So he's super biased in his Islam. Again, that's just what people are saying. So that's one kind of clarification I wanted to make post-interview. I also, we had the back and forth about transgender passports. So immediately it was very easy to find something about this from the TennesseeLookout.com. This was from September 24th, which is yesterday. It says transgender Tennesseans rush to get passports as Trump turns to SCOTUS to enforce the gender marker ban. So, not saying that transgender individuals cannot get passports at all, but they certainly cannot get them with the gender that they identify as, which we knew was coming. LGBTQ plus advocates in Tennessee are once again working to assist transgender residents in obtaining passports that reflect their gender identity before a window for the opportunity potentially comes to a close. So when we talk about, when he tried to divert me off of like, oh, well, we're not, because I said like, okay, well, if you really, as a good Christian, believe that these are individuals experiencing some kind of a mental health crisis, all right, I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there if that's what you believe. But then why would our response to people who you're telling me you think are hurting mentally, why would our response to them not be offering them help or assistance? Wouldn't that be the Christian thing to do? Instead, we're telling them, like, again, we're concentrating on things like telling them they can't have their gender identity on their passport, which is literally, even if you think it's quote crazy, it's literally hurting nobody. It's not, that one's not hurting there's not even, what's the argument? That's not hurting anyone. So clarification on that. And then the last thing I wanted to clarify was George Floyd, because he claimed that holding the knife to the pregnant woman was, quote, everywhere. And I go, well, I think everywhere means in the news sources you are reading, because just as I encourage the left to read the right stuff, I do encourage the right to read the left. I say the left needs to read the right and the right needs to read the left. And I go, that sounds like something you read on InfoWars, but okay. So I typed in George Floyd knife to pregnant woman, and this is something that like it. So
it was a gun.
It was.
He held a gun to the belly of a pregnant woman.
This is based on an armed robbery, which is true. He did commit an armed robbery. That's true. Yes, and Mike is right. It was a pistol, not a knife. He held him and several other people. But she was not pregnant here. So this is what. So he did, and I'm not saying this makes it okay. I'm just saying like this is how things get out of hand and misinformation is spread. So in 2007, George Floyd was involved in aggravated robbery. Okay, and this has somehow spread amongst people as she was pregnant. I don't know how it became that she was pregnant. But him and 5 other people forced their way into this woman's apartment in Houston. He held a pistol against the woman's abdomen, I guess maybe because of the placement of the pistol. And she was pregnant, but she was not. She was not. The victim's name is Araceli Henriquez. She was not pregnant. And then they even point out that is like a piece of misinformation that has was added later to the story and that has gone, been spread far and wide, which is like crazy, especially as someone who like ran for office, to be spreading misinformation about a story that was that big, I think is wild. But here we are. And for that, George Floyd pleaded guilty to aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. He served 5 years in prison for that. And, and so he did the crime. He did the time, as people like to say. It's not great, but I don't think that anyone who ever committed robbery should, I don't think you should be killed then for a loose, for what was it, stealing a Lucy? Like what even happened there? I think
counterfeit $20 bill.
Oh, so buying the Lucy with a counterfeit $20 bill?
I don't know.
So that's kind of how it comes into, that's how it goes into stealing the Lucy. George Floyd.
What I remember about the Lucy's was Eric Garner. He was strangled to death for selling Lucy's.
Oh my God, you're right. Fuck, there's so many people. You're right, I'm conflating them. My apologies.
Yeah, I think George Floyd was he passed the counterfeit $20 bill.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Cops were called and it ended poorly.
Right. You are correct. Yes. God, there's, okay. Yeah. That was a counterfeit bill. Okay. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So again, I mean, again, equally small issues. But Eric Garner. Oh God, and that was like so many years prior. And that was in New York City. Okay. Yes. Okay. So sorry, my bad on that. But anyway, to go back to it, to claim, you could see in the conversation that it's like, okay, well, George Floyd, he just kept saying like George Floyd was a criminal, and it's like, okay. I mean, I actually just watched this old clip from a young white woman going crazy on Oprah after the Rodney King riots, and that was over a traffic stop, right? And she's also trying to make the case that's for obviously the police went too far, but this guy's they always kind of same story, same tactic, like they always go back to like he was a criminal. So sometimes when you're a criminal, you end up getting, beaten in the street or killed. And it's just weird to me because then I just started thinking of all my white friends who are constantly doing cocaine out in the public. Anyway, and the last thing that I'll say is after we paused post-interview to start the beginning of this show, because the pastor said that he had another it seemed like he had another podcast appearance at 7, but it seems like he live streams on X at 7 p.m. and so he was doing that, and I just clicked into the live just for a moment. Literally the moment I clicked in, the words that were coming out of his mouth, and like, you can't script this. This feels like a South Park episode, I know, but it was Kyle Rittenhouse was a hero. He was talking about how he was previously attacked, apparently, for saying that Kyle Rittenhouse was a hero. And he was restating this to say that, he goes, I guess in retrospect, I was right. So doubling down on that is what he was busy doing.
Well,
and
I mean, again, this is just a matter of like opinion and worldview. It's like, this is a person who saw, as he said in the interview, like mass riots going down. He didn't look at the protests in the wake of George Floyd's death as, a reasonable public dissonance. I
get it. But even in the interview, right, we're talking about mass shootings. He somehow misdirects and brings it back to the Black Lives Matter protest. You're like, what?
Well, no, I mean, I think the point that he made was prescient for sure. He was trying
to make the point that the left is violent, but he was trying to make the point that it is the left that is more violent than the right. I just don't think that's true. I wouldn't even say, like, I don't even need you to say the right is more violent. I just need to say people are violent and there is a lot of politically motivated violence.
Here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead and disagree. I don't think people are inherently violent. I think people will naturally try to avoid a fight as best they can. But it's uneducated people are always prone to violence, and they're trying to keep us dumb so that we do become violent with each other. That's what I think. I mean, look, I come from the point of view that the conservatives are typically less prone to violence because they're less upset about the status quo. You know what I mean? Where like the left and progressivism, at the very nature of progressivism is you're not happy with the status quo. So you seeing these injustices that are being perpetrated on your watch are naturally going to inflame you a lot more than they would a conservative group whose their point of view is homeostasis is great.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but also, if we're talking about only political violence specifically, which we were talking about mass shootings in general, but when we're talking about politically motivated violence, which was what he was trying to veer us into, there was just a study with clear numbers released like in the past couple of weeks that we read on this show. I believe that shows that the right is responsible for way more political violence for almost every year for many decades. Political violence breakdown, right and left chart. God, I need like an archivist to work on this show to Tell me.
It's also tough to do a quote unquote right versus left breakdown when Dick Cheney appeared at the DNC this year. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, because we're saying people who used to be left are right, people who are used to be right are left.
It feels like it's I don't know. Like I personally hate getting caught up in this culture war left versus right thing when it's like, dude, these NGOs, these dark money groups have been spending like crazy to, on both the far right and the far left, to the point where it's like you're just trying to inflame, the common man so that we can't find union and harmony and focus on our common enemy.
Right. And what I think the right is doing, and again, smart tactic, is they are taking advantage of the uptick that we've seen in left-wing political violence incidents only in 2025. Because I found a different...
I would be shocked if 2020 had fewer right-wing political violent acts than left-wing political violent attacks.
Well, here it's right here. So here, political violence trends by ideology. This is from 2011 to 2024. The Center for and the source is the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS. They reported an average of 20 right-wing terror incidents per year between 2011 and 2024, and left-wing average three per year during that same period. They do note that the left-wing incidents did trend a bit upward after 2016. But then in the recent trends, which again, the right is smartly monopolizing upon, 2025 only, a CSIS study noted a significant decline in right-wing terror attacks in the first half of 2025, which makes sense. The guy you won is in office, and a lot of times we're fighting against the group in power. So again, this makes sense.
Not only that, you're the group who's controlling these stats. I can't take any stats that come out of the Trump White House seriously after the last jobs numbers report.
But that's .org. No, CIS you can trust. It's a nonprofit policy research, so it's not out of the White House.
Okay.
That's just CISIS.org, because I would agree with you. I wouldn't trust the stats out of the White House, but that's okay. Again, we'd have to dig a little bit deeper as we do with everything, but a CSIS study noted a significant decline in right-wing terror attacks in the first half of 2025, and it does note potentially linked to Donald Trump's election win. Corinne Fisher is saying definitely. And only one right-wing incident was recorded through July 4th, 2025. And left-wing incidents, the CSIS study showed an increase in left-wing attacks and plots, placing 2025 on pace for the highest number of left-wing incidents in more than 3 decades. So the right works fast, right? They see this uptick. They all of a sudden embellish it to say, no, it's so much more now. It's literally 9 months. For the first time, like in decades and decades, we're talking 9 months, and we will not hear the right stop talking about it. And it is smart politics.
Yeah, but that study is, I get what you're saying, and I agree the right does move fast. They move fast. As soon as the narrative starts shifting.
They move fast, baby.
They jump on it. I mean, we saw how they reacted to the cancel culture thing. As soon as they have the power to get somebody off the air, they're relishing in Jimmy Kimmel being, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. That's standard operating procedure for anybody, right? Like, you create a weapon and you rail against it, and then the moment that weapon is in your possession, it's like, maybe let's think about this thing. But I mean, I'm saying the data is fundamentally flawed if you're telling me there was more right-wing incidents in the year 2020 than there were left-wing incidents. Simply that tells me that you're not categorizing as the pastor talked about, billions of dollars in destruction caused by the George Floyd riots as left-wing political violence, which I don't know how you don't.
Yeah, but I don't know that.
I mean,
it's like social though. So then, like, are we also like including abortions in left-wing political violence deaths? I feel like it's a little bit, how is like political violence defined? Because to me, I'm thinking when I'm talking about people, like individuals who promote political ideas being slain.
I mean, look, I'm just I'm saying I don't know. I mean, that felt like a very, yes, it's social.
I see what you're saying, but also how many people died during the George, because I'm usually talking about death. So like George Floyd protests deaths.
Okay, I mean, how many people died because their small business got torched and they weren't able to feed their families?
Again, I hear you. So it looks like it looks 36, 25. I see an article that says 25. I see the AI is telling me 36. So, let's say 30-ish, something around that ballpark, split it. And so political violence is defined according to Wikipedia is violence which is perpetuated in order to achieve political goals. It could include violence which is used by a state against other states, violence which is used by a state against civilians and non-state actors. That includes like forced disappearance or psychological warfare. They are including police brutality. Okay, so right goes real up there. And violence which is used by violent non-state actors against states and civilians, kidnappings, assassinations, terrorist attacks, torture, guerrilla warfare. It can also
So there's only one count of police brutality this year? That can't be true.
That's what I'm saying, right? Because I would not include that in political violence. But now that seeing that police brutality, I mean, again, according to Wikipedia, is included, then I would say, okay, well then that makes sense actually that Black Lives Matter protest killings would be included. Then that to me evens it out. It can also describe politically motivated violence, which is used by violent non-state actors against a state, rebellion, rioting. So yes, treason, a coup d'etat. Or it can describe violence which is used against others. So, I mean, it looks like we got to go back to the drawing board with a lot of these numbers because it seems like a lot of things perhaps are not being accounted for that should be. But yeah,
however,
so
in the
rioting, yes, should be, but the protest would not be, but the rioting would be.
Right. I'm just saying in the confusion, the right is like, hey, look at these violent lefties with their it's like, all right, what is the right going to start calling for gun reform now? What's going on?
I know. And then the last thing that I saw right before I started my show as Pastor Lahmeyer was continuing his riveting stream. And I'm not using that sarcastically, just I'm using it because perhaps for the wrong reasons.
She was raptured to the screen.
I was raptured to the screen. And I completely missed this, but apparently YouTube had pulled Nick Fuentes
and AJ
and Alex Jones from YouTube. Then they reinstated them. Then they just banned them again. This is breaking today. And so we'll end today with this Daily Beast article.
Can we please just look up Alex Jones' new mustache at the end of this article?
Oh, yeah, of course. Pull it up. Just remind me. And so this is from the Daily Beast. MAGA's far-right foe launches comeback attempt that quickly backfires. This article is specifically just about Nick Fuentes. The young extremist wants to take over the Republican Party. YouTube's in his way. The far-right figure most feared by MAGA was reinstated on YouTube after years of censorship. Less than a day later, he was gone. And no, he's feared by MAGA because he thinks that MAGA are pussies and they need to be more violent, right? I believe that was the whole thing. He's like part of the Groyper community, I think. Nick Fuentes, a 27-year-old white nationalist and live streamer, launched a new YouTube channel on Wednesday, shortly after the Google-owned platform announced it would begin allowing previously banned accounts to appeal for reinstatement. The platform's move to roll back Biden-era speech policies on vaccines and political misinformation was hailed by Republicans as a win for free expression. But it wasn't long before the platform began attracting once fringe figures like Fuentes, whose origin channel, America First with Nicholas J. Fuentes, was banned in 2021 for repeated violations of the platform's hate speech policy. Fuentes' channel, along with conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, was removed hours after being reinstated. A YouTube spokesperson wrote on X that the pilot program on terminations, quote, is not yet open. It's still against our community guidelines for previously terminated users to use, possess, or create other channels, and will terminate new channels from previously terminated users in accordance with these guidelines. They wrote, adding that more information will be available soon. That didn't quell the immediate backlash from figures on the far right. We want to break up Google. We don't want it to work with it, Steve Bannon said on his podcast War Room Thursday morning today. Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes put up YouTube channels last night. Guess what? Taken down right away, he continued. It's unbelievable. Failed presidential candidate and short-lived Doge head Vivek Ramaswamy also took to X to slam Fuentes' suspension. Our country is at its best when we're able to hear one another. Nick Fuentes and Jimmy Kimmel probably don't like me for different reasons, he wrote. I don't care. It's still un-American to muzzle the peaceful expression of opinions. And no, that's not a legal point. It's a cultural point. And I think part of the reason why the right really loves to push this idea that they're into the peaceful exchange of expressions, the peaceful exchange of opinions, rather, is because they all agreed on speaking points and they all use pretty much the same speaking points and they're really good on it and they've come to mostly a consensus. Mostly. Obviously, there are people like Nick Fuentes who says MAGA is not good enough, you know? And I think we could learn a lot on the left from being what are our three main values?
I mean, look, I don't agree with much of what Nick says, but I do agree with the concept of like MAGA was selling a bill of goods and like the hashtag you fell for it award.
Yeah, well, yes.
And it's like, all right, I mean, look, if that's going to be your criticism of the Trump administration, I'm right there with you, homie.
Well, again, when you get super far right, a lot of super far right ideas match with super far left ideas. Let's see. But I also think it's funny because, you know, the same thing, I used to be regularly appearing on Fox News. Why have I not appeared anymore? Well, I was booked literally on the first show on Fox News. You know, what the hell is that show called? Fox News Tonight? Fox News Saturday Night. So I was booked on the first, you know, I had been a regular on Fox News Saturday Night throughout, you know, many different hosts, the last, you know, and the current one being Jimmy Fallon. And I had been appearing regularly on that show. And I was booked again on the first episode after Trump won. And I was kicked off that show, told it was a scheduling problem. I knew, first of all, I called it 24 hours in advance because I questioned something that Jimmy Fallon posted about like abortion or something that was crazy. And I was like, can't wait to discuss on your show. And then within 24 hours, I got a call from the booker that I was no longer needed, but that it was just a scheduling issue. And in my head, and I said straight to her, I was like, please stop feeding me bullshit. I go, I know this is personal and this is not a scheduling issue. And sure enough, they were like, oh, we'll get you on soon. Never heard from them again. Christina either. So it's not just me being difficult. I know what the real fans are thinking. But anyway, yeah. So it just made me laugh because I was like, oh, okay. So you're open to opinions until like you don't need them when your guy's in office and you don't even need to appease to the libs anymore and you can just fully take over. So I really don't like that hypocrisy. Our country is at its best when we're able to hear one another. Nick Fuentes and Jimmy Kimmel probably don't like me for different reasons, he wrote. I don't care. It's still un-American to muzzle the peaceful expression of opinions. And no, that's not a legal point. It's a cultural point. The MAGA mainstream, however, was notably silent. Fuentes publicly turned on Trump ahead of the 2024 election, saying the campaign had been hijacked by the same consultants, lobbyists, and donors that he defeated in 2016. Since then, he's blasted the former president relentlessly. It's just getting embarrassing at this point, he wrote on X, reacting to a federal judge's order to shut down the Trump-backed Alligator Alcatraz immigration detention facility in Florida. And recently, a New York Times profile of Fuentes revealed that current and former members of the Trump administration, along with outside advisors, would not comment on the extremist influencer out of fear of inviting online attacks from him and his zealous followers. 3 of them mentioned the sudden ubiquity of Fuentes-related clips circulating in their social media feeds. The article noted, the Daily Beast has reached out to the White House for comment, and that is by Laura Esposito. So that's what we're going to end our show with on today. Oh, also one more thing that I found very interesting that I was holding in my head for the interview with Pastor Lahmeyer was that when I asked him to tell me who he was very purposeful with making it known that before anything else, he was someone who loves God, who is a father, and who is a husband. And I thought that's very, very interesting and very, effortlessly put it in there, got to get those ideas in people's heads without it feeling forced. Anyway,
Corinne?
Yes.
Are you ready to see what Alex Jones looks like?
Oh, God. Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. Yes. No, stop
Our
it.
biggest problem is African overpopulation.
Stop it.
We need to get vaccines in them so there's less people. Our biggest problem is...
What? Did he say I shaved a Hitler mustache, or did he just do it and appear like that?
No, he actually came out, like his opening this week was like,
and it was...
And also, he's so fat. Hitler wasn't that fat. That mustache looks so bad on someone that fat.
yeah, you're not supposed to have that much of a Hitler mustache ever.
I will say though, he looks like he lost a little weight.
He did lose a little weight.
Yeah, I was like, I was like, I gotta give him props. I was like, it does look like he's still fat, but he did lose some weight.
The Hitler mustache, and it was very interesting. I could tell you it had a wild effect on women. I thought they were about to start throwing their panties at me. And they didn't know why. They were looking at me because most modern women, even young ones, don't really even know even what Hitler is. But they in the back of their head, they know what it is.
Who doesn't know what Hitler is, or who Hitler is? What is going
Lex
on?
Luthor meets Adolf Hitler looks with blue eyes, and they just didn't know what to do. They're like melting. The Hitler.
I want one of those women who melted to please call in the show. Please, this is my area of expertise. To get you unstuck on a bad dude. Oh my God, guys. Well,
I don't like good-looking guys. I like them to be really skinny and pale and look like they're dying.
and have a Hitler mustache. Guys, this has been Without a Country. All right, when does this go? This is the one that is going to air on. Let's see, on October 8th, I believe.
Nailed it.
October 8th. What are you going to do? Do plugs for October 8th. Obviously, follow us all on social media. If you want to join the Patreon, it is patreon.com/withoutaCountry. So if you joined the Patreon in the past 2 weeks, I didn't read your name on this episode because I don't know it yet, but I will get to you when I'm back from Japan 100%. All hail Christopher Fungi. Of course, you are still our great dictator. We appreciate you. Thank you to my capitalist pigs. Thank you to my cuties. And if I'm guessing it's sold out by now, but on the off chance that it's not, Los Angeles, California, Wednesday, October 22nd, I'm doing Gash in the Belly Room at the Comedy Store. Incredible lineup, such a fun show. I'm so excited for that. And then Friday, November 14th, guys, we fucked the Sluts Giving show as part of New York Comedy Festival is going to be a huge show at the Crown Hill Theater in Brooklyn. It's our only live performance together for this whole year. It's going to be a 12-year celebration of the podcast. It's our 12-year anniversary. We are so excited for it. We're in talks with some incredible guests. So definitely get tickets to that. All the links are in the Linktree link in my bio. And Mike, for October 8th, what would be the things that you're promoting?
So for this upcoming, what is it? October the 16th, Anxiety Attack in New York Comedy Club, and the big one, Melrose Ballroom, November 20th. We are flying in the best armored fighters on the planet for a winner-take-all Grand Prix. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tickets at thearmoredleague.com.
Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I genuinely enjoyed it. I really like talking to people I disagree with and hearing them out. I think it's like, I don't know. I like hearing directly from people rather than having like some liberal write about it and tell me who these people are. I don't know. And again, you can't trust anyone on what they say to you, especially when he knows that I'm a liberal. But I just found it very interesting, insightful. And, tell me what you got from the interview, things that you noticed, things that alarmed you, things that you think we could use in the Democratic Party, any of those things. I'm Corinne Fisher. This is Without a Country. And remember, the truth is in there. Peace. Have a great week. Bye.